next game, the middle game of the weekend, is Scotland against Wales, taking place in Murrayfield this Saturday evening. 4:45 kickoff, Greenwich Mean Time, local time as well. Refereed by Matthew Carley.
Right.
Weather set to be cold, a bit windy, some chance of snow up in Edinburgh.
Yes.
Proper winter rugby, but not too inhibiting, all things considered. I think Ireland, France is the one with the bum weather this weekend.
Yeah, Sunday the worst if it's expected to roll in, but
Yes.
but it's still Edinburgh and it's still February, so it can be a bit miserable. But these two teams being where they are, they're kind of used to conditions like this.
It's not going to be too inhibiting, but it is winter rugby, and that's still a factor here.
Yeah.
This game takes on enormous significance in the wake of last week. Two sides who both pulled off upset victories.
Yeah.
And will be bullish about their chances of winning here and setting up a Triple Crown decider, for both teams.
Yeah.
Scotland looking at a couple of home games away from a Triple Crown. They haven't won a Triple Crown since, I believe, 93.
Right.
And Wales obviously more routine Triple Crown winners than that, but a win here would really set them up, and they almost have muscle memory when it comes to winning these Grand Slams once they get a head of steam up.
Yeah.
And while that does seem a far-fetched notion now, given just the state of the team, a win here would be making them feel very, very good.
Momentum's such a factor in tournaments like this, and in this tournament in particular, and both of them are riding a bit of a momentum wave into this clash on Saturday. So I expect some fireworks. It's definitely, both teams will be up for it. It's very different for Scotland, who have definitely been the more impressive of the two over the last kind of year and a half, really. They've been growing. They've built a very robust pack. They now have Finn back. They're their primary 10. They have some key danger men out wide. Stuart Hogg's form looking fantastic as well. Really good set piece, and just a really well balanced team. What they are not used to and unaccustomed to is the favourites tag, and they traditionally do not wear it well. It'll be a different thing, as opposed to being backs to the wall. You all doubted us, go into Twickenham. No one's doubting you now. We kind of expect you to beat Wales because you look better than them. And that can be tough. It's
a different mindset.
Especially after such an emotional pitch of a game last week when you're beating England for the first time in however many years in Twickenham. That's a very emotional game, and there can be a bit of an adrenaline dump the week after. We see it with Ireland a lot of the time after big emotionally charged performances. That and the fact that the Welsh are used to beating Scotland in prickly little games as well. They do it very often.
Yeah, it's that horrible combination of a tough game that they should win, that they need to win. And in terms of like Scotland, when they took that drop goal on towards the end of the game, it told me that they were thinking on a macro scale about the tournament as well as everything else. They didn't just want to run out the clock. They ran it out to a minute, and then they were like, might fancy a pot shot here, taking this out to 8 points. Now the pass kind of took it away from Finn Russell, and chances are in the wet he's not knocking that over anyway. But it didn't happen that way. But it is interesting that they were thinking on that level, trying to take the losing bonus from England and work an edge that way. This is like, from that point of view, it's definitely a different mindset for them. I think they're bullish. I think they want to be bullish. Heading into the World Cup, I remember them talking about wanting to win the competition. They weren't as a team at all in a place to do that, and they ended up looking silly. They've been more quiet and more impressive since then.
That's right.
But they know they have a good team, and they do have a good team, and they want to get out of their own way and put it all together. And from that point of view, it'll be very interesting to see. It'll be a real test of character and a real test of where this side is at. Heading into the next week and heading into the rest of the competition. We're going to learn about Scotland this week, I think.
I expect if it's a tight contest going the distance, I think I do back Scotland as probably the better team right now to nick that. The fear is if you arrive for the first 20 minutes not really dialed into the game, and suddenly like the quick PVAC offense yields 2 tries and then you're chasing it. You don't want that. You don't need that.
One thing about the Six Nations that's true is just the difference between the best team and the worst team that isn't Italy tends to not be that big.
No,
like a
few mistakes,
small margins,
a few moments.
If you don't show up at the pitch, you're going to be caught. And that's the test for Scotland. From Wales's point of view, last week
they got the win.
They did
against
get
the
the
14
win.
men of Ireland, but they got the win
chances.
they desperately
That's
needed.
The key thing. Like a couple of tries with no possession, and
it's not a bad stat.
It's not a bad stat. Like the hope for Wales is in the offense, is in the slick handling and the finishing ability of the likes of Reece
tempo and just the aggressive lines of running they can implement. Especially with like obviously they had more of an attritional game just as far as colour. Like they're going to have to mix things up more than Scotland going into this one in terms of selection, but it feels like they have a team that's built to operate at a good pace, and a pace that can ask questions of pretty much any defence.
Yeah.
And Scotland really weren't tested defensively last week as well, so they'll fancy their chances of having a cut at the likes of Redpath, who's new in the jersey and hasn't really had a lot of defending to do just yet. You'd expect Wales to try and take it to them in those kind of areas.
They'll have to. And the other thing is just whether they can withstand what is the ferocity of this Scottish pack. I mean, they were up against a similar animal in Ireland last week, and they certainly failed to dominate against 7 forwards, and arguably
Ireland scrummaged with 7 a few times and there was no purchase for this.
Scotland are scrumming aggressively now. They really are
winning penalties in Twickenham.
And being aggrieved that they're not winning enough penalties. Like, they really are trying to make a point at the scrum. And so it's on like Wyn Jones, who did have a great game but also worked his hole off last week to stand up and withstand what's coming for them. I mean, that's the other sort of dynamic for Wales. As far as the squads are concerned, it's two very polarised scenarios. I mean, Scotland got through their impressive victory against England largely unscathed.
No injury crisis for Scotland.
Didn't have to make too many tackles, and it helps,
Yes, it does,
outside of Jamie Ritchie, who went off injured, but I believe he's fine. He's been doing media for them. They haven't had any real issues, and I don't expect much in the way of changes. You could see maybe Scott Steele isn't too far away.
Definitely pushing Price, but they seem to be.
Gregor has a lot of faith in Ali Price, rightly or wrongly, and Ali Price is probably the main man going forward. Other potential changes, maybe they'd look to freshen up the pack, except that the pack is such a nice feel to it. You could see them throwing a rogue Gary Graham in there, or maybe,
he was good off the bench. But then they carried very robustly anyway. Fagerson starting was very good too.
I suspect we're going to look at the exact same 15. I actually think, in spite of how historic in some sense the win was, it wasn't necessarily the most physically challenging. As much as they won the physical battle, they weren't tested too much on a defensive point of view. They didn't have too much in the way of injuries. Really, this game was won at the kicking and the set piece, which are static and without necessarily body breaking
risk. Whereas the same can't be said for Wales. Wales and Ireland both got dealt hefty blows in terms of their campaign going forward, and their squad has had to be bolstered with some new blood. I think Wales, who was it? Dan Lydiot obviously was the first to fall, suffered a very serious injury. He's done his cruciate, another cruciate in this year of cruciate ligaments.
So last year was the year of cruciate ligaments that continues. I don't know. Terrible stuff to see so many athletes across so many sports going down with this awful
horrendous injury. And then there were head knocks for Johnny Williams and Hallam Amos as well. Then Thomas Williams, wee scrummy, suffered a damaged hamstring.
He played well as well.
He played pretty well. He set a nice tempo.
I actually thought when Gareth Davis came on, there was a noticeable dip in the tempo of their offense, and the best moments that they had in the first half were when Thomas Williams was driving that tempo. Now Gareth Davis did have some good moments. I thought the wide pass off his left hand he threw for the Reece Samet try
was a very good pass.
Lovely ball, and he does have those killer plays in him. Obviously that kick at the end was pretty horrific.
It could have cost them. We were denied that grandstand finish due to an Irish error, but on another day that could have cost them, and it could have been the narrative. But he's still available and will probably start, given that hamstring tweak to Thomas Williams.
But tempo setting, obviously, that's a blow.
There was a new one today as well, just as we're shooting this. It's Wednesday evening, but apparently George North now is unavailable for the weekend as well. Having suffered, I think, an eye poke of some kind.
It was an eye poke. There was nothing deliberate about it.
No, it was a very dynamic kind of moment in the game, and he did cop one, and then he was wearing a bit of a shiner by the end, and it seems to have been a bit more than a shiner, because
I saw some angry Welsh fans calling it a gouge. It wasn't.
No, it was a slap in the eye. A dynamic moment.
People do have to be realistic about these things. I know a finger in the eye gets people's goat, but I mean, it was totally an accidental collision. It would be as ridiculous to sanction Henshaw for that as it would be to sanction Tipperick for the fact that his knee hit Sexton's head, and that's why Sexton had to leave the field. I mean, it was just an incidental collision, but it was a knee to the head, but it was a finger in the eye. doesn't matter.
Yeah, context is key.
It was an accidental collision, but a nasty one, and unfortunate for North, who had a very up and down game last week.
He had some terrible moments, but did grab a nice try.
Yeah, he was threatening. He was threatening as a runner, and he always is threatening as a runner. And they're definitely weaker for that. And it means they're going to have some big, big selection headaches going into this weekend. I mean, it's a bare bones squad. I mean, the centre is good. Both centres are going to be unavailable more than likely unless Johnny Williams and co can pass the concussion protocols. But you're likely looking at Owen Watkin and Nick Tompkins. No Jonathan Davis, no Johnny Williams.
New look.
George North. Completely new look to it. Watkins been out of favour for some time. Nick Tompkins came in last year. I actually thought his cameo at the weekend was actually pretty good.
Yeah, he looked dynamic, didn't he?
He made a defensive play.
Yeah.
I was like, Nick Tompkins made a defensive play.
He was a young man when they threw him in there. There's still we don't know his ceiling yet because he's still growing as a player.
Raw talent, speed.
Yeah, he's had some lovely touches as well.
Could even work a lot better than George North just because the soft hands he has as well.
Yeah, can reach the extremities of a defensive line, many defences in the Six Nations are tending towards the narrow side. So having a distributing option and a pacey guy in the centres could be an accidental kind of gem, potentially.
He's exciting in that way. The other options, it's curious to see what they do in the back row. I think the obvious option is just Navidi straight in,
considering how well he played as well.
With Wainwright covering on the bench. There's been some murmurings in Wales that just didn't turn over enough ball. As well as Tipperick plays and as well as Navidi plays. Actually, Faletau had a poor game, which might have been the missing link in that back row, but they just didn't offer a jackal threat all game.
Yeah, where usually that had been an MO. You have Lydia chopping, and then either Warburton or whoever over the years has been in over the top. And to be fair, normally you do see that more from them. They seem content to kind of use tackling as their defense.
I think it's a tactical thing, and I think it's probably one that they're going to need to look at. Because their jackling is so important.
And you need to slow the Scots down as well. Whether you succeed in affecting the turnover or not, you need to give messy ball to Finn Russell to work with, as opposed to clean, quick ball, because that's got to be a recipe for stopping the Scots.
Totally. Yeah. Although, from my point of view, I still think in Tipperick, in Ken Owens, in Alan Wynne Jones, they have the personnel there who should be able to jackal if that's what you want to do. So I don't think they need to change any personnel there, and I don't think they will. They've enough enforced changes not to be tinkering with a pretty as good a pack as they can field at the moment.
So just in terms of who's called up, then I know James Botham, Lloyd Williams, and the uncapped Willis Halaholo are actually called into the squad in the wake of all those injuries as well.
The bare bones nature of that backline means that Halaholo might get a place on the bench as well.
That's potential thing, because he can cover a few positions as well. They're bolstered with a bit more talent, but obviously took a hit. It's not ideal to have injuries in week one, but it does happen. Such is the nature of this tournament. That kind of does it for the squads. We'll move into just what the teams are looking to do now, and we're going to start as we do with the home side. That's Scotland. What are they looking to do with the ball? I guess last week we saw a pretty momentous and historic occasion for them, and a moment in Scottish rugby history, which was a pleasure to watch as Six Nations fans that we are. But this game, as we said, there's a potential for them to arrive in a bit sluggish if they're not focused on the process. If they're a little bit off, they could get caught. So they need to stick to that process, trust themselves, and arrive to play.
Respect Wales and earn the right to go Finn Russelling.
Yes,
as well.
Indeed. Don't do it from minute one.
Yeah, I think it's got to be about imposing themselves physically and winning those inside battles.
That's what it was about last week.
And all of their wins last year. I mean, their pack is mighty impressive when it performs as a unit. Their set piece looks rock solid, and then in Hamish Watson, they have a truly world-class back row, and on his day, Johnny Gray, truly world-class lock as well. And even guys I was calling out, like Scott Cummings, I thought had a fantastic game.
He did.
I thought George Turner coming in at hooker was a revelation.
Brilliant.
Matt Fagerson, likewise at 8, just winning contacts. That's the kind of bullish play that you want to see from Scotland. And Wales, at times against Ireland, whenever Ireland got consistent possession, especially in that second quarter with 14 men, it was just like a 10 to 15 minute period where Ireland had the ball, and their defence couldn't deal with it. They were giving away penalties. They gave away a very soft try. They don't like consistently tackling when they don't have that poached threat. If Scotland maintain their discipline and the offensive breakdown, and retain possession and move the ball, especially when they've got a guy like Russell just winning contact, forcing the soak tackles out of Wales. The space will arrive.
Yeah, they should. They seem to have a better team, a better equipped team than Ireland had to attack them that way.
Yeah,
and if they have all 15 of their men, even better. Because the Welsh defensive line currently, and to be honest, all throughout Wayne Pivac's tenure, has been pretty unimpressive. Has been a little bit lackluster. Some of their contacts haven't been good. So yeah, you'd expect this Scotland team to use their distributing assets that they have to move them about and ask those questions of them. And foundationally speaking, it's all based on the set piece. This Scotland team, that's what they were doing last year when they didn't have Finn Russell. It's what they should still be building on, especially at home in Murrayfield in a winter game. You want to get your scrums right, want to get your lineouts right, you want to make theirs a mess and play the game that way. They did that
so well last week. They did that so well. So I do expect them to be aggressive in those areas. I expect them to try and maul off lineouts. I expect them to try and win penalties off scrums. And then the other thing, obviously, once they get that go for it ball, is the distribution of Finn Russell. And I think, the disruption Wales have in the centre, and Nick Tompkins, who makes some defensive plays but is a very young soul.
And he's an offensive. It's a centre, really.
And trying to make plays by shooting out of line. I mean, that is what Finn Russell eats up for breakfast. Yeah. So I do expect them to just try and gain the initial advantage with the physical carries, but then getting Finn on the ball with a little bit of space, trying to work Nick Tompkins and trying to get a read off him.
Yeah.
I think the best thing that you can do against Finn Russell is get a read on where the space is and try and fill that area, because he's always looking to try and find the space with his passing game.
True. Yeah.
But if Tompkins shoots out and tries to cut off a pass,
we've seen that's it before.
That's where the danger comes.
Skipping over his head.
Any number of ways to exploit that.
Yeah.
And I do expect them to do that. And then they've got such talent in the outside channels with Hogg. And even Maitland looking brilliant for the first time in so long, looking brilliant last week.
He had his best performance that I can remember in many moons. He was the best performing Sarri of any of the Sarris we saw in action as well. He looked sharp.
Maybe he needed a break of all of them.
Yeah.
And then Duhan van der Merwe, obviously there are no words needed. Phenomenal.
Lethal. 6'4", 118 kilos, taking tries that dynamic. Really he shouldn't need. It's a him v2 and he's scoring it. That's good wingering.
Like 6'4" and that weight, and yet he's stronger than he looks.
Yeah,
that's the kind of bizarre thing.
Yeah.
Like it's he's a ferocious animal, and getting him in space is definitely a recipe for goodness. Like I said, they have a very balanced team. The kicking game is where they won it last week. It's not to be overstated. I think we saw on exit the when Ireland had James Lowe doing exit kicks against Wales, it worked really well. He just sat in the pocket, pumped it deep. Wales did not respond particularly
I think
well.
It's going to catch it. Like it is the recipe, the antidote to England, but I think a lot of teams are just sitting expecting the box kicks and sitting a little shallower.
A lot of teams copied what England do off restarts, trying to pin teams back. A lot of teams have been using that as their MO, and that's a good way to escape it, especially if you notch up a 3-pointer and then can instantly get back in opposition territory. It's great.
That's your only goal when you score a 3-pointer. Is exit.
There was one where Lowe literally hammered it into the in goal for a 22 dropout, and then from there they launched an attacking set, and that's got to be something Scotland look at. Like literally hit it into the in goal, let them kick a 22 dropout, they'll chip it to you and work from there.
Yeah.
Because there is scope to attack from around the halfway line.
And the in goal is nice and big in Murrayfield as well, isn't it? So there's very little risk as far as kicking it dead.
Yeah, exactly. So hammer the ball deep into their half when you're in your own half. Aim for the in goal almost. Obviously don't kick it too far.
Yeah.
But if you're Stuart Hogg, get that long spiral going. Likewise Finn Russell, hammer that ball deep and then launch off the returning kick, which is usually around the halfway line, and from there a couple of nice movements. And we saw it last week. We saw like Ali Price was getting pulverised on the box kicks by Maro Itoje, and then they made the adjustment, and there was one sequence which was lovely where he dummied the box kick and Itoje was ready to charge down and just went right
wide and
actually
space.
Russell linked with Redpath, who broke through the line, linked up with Hogg, who linked up with Maitland, and all of a sudden they found themselves in the halfway line.
Beautiful exit.
That was an excellent exit, but also just trying those little moves from the halfway line, probing at this inexperienced Welsh defence, using that Finn Russell passing game and that power, being patient and working them that way. I think it could be stellar for them.
And it involves like obviously building on the guys like Hamish Watson and like Fagerson want to find at number 8, these big ball carrying forwards. You want them on the game, on the ball early and often in the early exchanges, and creating that quick clean ball. Like when they get 2 second rucks, 1 second, 2 second rucks going, they look very, very good. Very, very good. It's when you're getting the 5 and 6 second rucks that you may as well not have a Finn Russell there, because you don't need.
I don't think it's long before Finn Russell clicks as well, and I I think
their offense didn't fully they grabbed a great try last week and the winning try and the worthy credit. They weren't on their A game offensively last week. It feels like there's more in the tank, which is such an exciting prospect for this Scotland team.
That's the key. Really, if they can put together a nice offensive performance where they are clinical, and I think they do have the weapons to do that. They have a lovely balance there back line. Could be an exciting day for them going forward. From a defensive point of view, dealing with that Welsh attack is an interesting one for them. Likewise with the offensive game, it's everything starts with being bullying and being physical up front and not giving away anything cheap on the inside. But you do have to be mindful of Wales's passing game, which was excellent last week.
It's true.
And they have very, very good wingers. Obviously Liam Williams coming back in.
That changes the aerial aspect of it as well. You can't the bombs are less of an option even still.
That's why I think that the box kick really should be retired for this team, because Ali Price struggled so much with it.
He's not a good box kicker either.
No, they're putting themselves under pressure with it. They did make the adjustment last week, and they need to stick with it. Like when Hogg can kick the ball 80 meters, there's just no need at all for them to be box kicking. So I'd like to see them move past that.
Yeah, I would think so as well. Yeah, no, they have other resources, and it makes no sense when Liam Williams is on the team opposite you as well. Just play to your strengths, don't play into theirs. Bigger as well is a pretty rock solid operator under the high ball. So mix it up, go deeper, find and kick for grass when you're exiting.
And I think they have got that message. And in terms of just defending them, limiting the time that Liam Williams has in the ball, limiting the time that Rhys Sammet has in the ball, that's key. And what that involves is, obviously inside you want to be robust, you want to get in their face. Wales are a team that plays a lot off 9. You saw it last week, very little play off 10 until they get into the red zone, in which case, but even then, the 9 is making the killer pass, and then it's just attempting to get quick hands and move the ball out to the wing. Don't bite in. That was one thing that Ireland did that was massively frustrating for both tries. The second one mainly, but on a couple of breaks as well. I think it was James Lowe just biting in for no reason when Halfpenny was the guy giving the last pass. And it's like, drift off him, let Halfpenny make the run. He's going to make the pass, but he's not going to make the run to score the ball from there. Your inside man's going to get him. So just man marking the danger players on that Welsh team, who are going to be those wingers. So if you're Duhan van der Merwe, don't shoot in, stick on your winger, make Wales make the play on the inside, keep your width, and keep the wingers out of the game, and force Wales to attack on the inside where they're weaker. And that's the key. Wales are going to be trying to get around you. You've got to not let that happen and force them narrow.
It'll be a big test, as I've alluded to before, for that fledgling centre partnership that looked so good with ball in hand. Have yet to see them really tested because England didn't really go there. But as you say, Wales will likely be looking for the extremities. Big task for Harris at 13, as it always is for a 13, but similarly Redpath at 12. Fresh into the jersey, it'll be a different tempo of game. There'll be more asked of them, and they need to be cohesive as a unit and shut that down.
Need to keep their width. Need to keep their width
for sure. And then I suppose
deal with the kicking game. That's the other thing. I expect Wales to be launching bombs. As much as they played off 9 last week, I expect them to make the adjustment, and I'll be disappointed if they don't. With Liam Williams being bigger in the team, they should be trying to test. As good as Hogg played last week, they should be kicking more accurately to test him with bombs.
Himself and Maitland and Van der Merwe all need to be sharp.
Winning those battles.
And they need to field the high balls. No casual drops, because that's just the in that these teams are looking for. That's really the task at hand for Scotland. When you're looking at Wales, then I suppose it's a different equation. You're going up to Murrayfield against a team very favoured. You did get the vital win last week, but if you're really honest with yourselves, and they probably are, and even Alan Wynn's post-match interview had a little tinge of he knew they could have lost that game.
How deep do the problems in this team run?
That's the question.
And can momentum alone put them to bed?
There's potential for it. They are such a momentum team. Historically, they've done Grand Slams and then backed them up with wooden spoons. They're the team that does that. They can flip on a dime. So they will take a lot of heart and a lot of momentum from that victory last week into this fixture, and they'll fancy it. They've got good memory banks of beating this Scotland team, and they'll fancy having a go at them and then teeing up a Triple Crown and maybe more should they get that win. From an offensive point of view, when they have the ball, they need to do basically what England didn't do. Ask some questions, keep the ball in the hand, set some tempo off 9, and really try and test this Scotland
and when
defense.
they did that against Ireland, they did yield meters. When the ball is quick, they can be lethal. They do have excellent hands. They pick nice runs. I think Tompkins can be absolutely lethal when he gets on the ball.
It's also true of like even when you're looking at their domestic sides, like some of them aren't of the caliber. Like Dragons are a weak enough side, but when a line break happens, they're pretty good at adjusting and grabbing tries. Even Dragons, they look good with ball in hand on a club level all the way up to this, and it's something that PVAC has tried to introduce to them. Even last year you saw glimpses of it. Some of the tries they scored last year, even in losing efforts, were beautiful.
Last week, just working Tipperick onto the ball as well, like his passing game so crisp and so clean, and likewise Alan Wynne-Jones. They've done a really great job of putting those guys into the midfield and into the wide channels, and
where they can have an influence.
Because they're threats on the ball. Like Tipperick especially, you have to mind him from a defensive point of view, and if you have Tipperick and Tompkins and Liam Williams lining up in one channel, they're all threats in the ball, they're all quick, they'll all go if you leave them, so they're dangerous, and they've got the quality to exploit where the space is and to make the quick passes if need be. Those are the kind of pictures they want to work. They want to be fluid, quick, and getting wide, and then working their best playmakers on the ball to try and find the space and find the score. And they did a good job of that last week in a limited circumstance.
Yes.
What was very poor about what they did last week was everything that happened when they weren't in the opposition 22.
They didn't find entries.
No,
other than
Dan Biggar was a non-factor, and it was all about Thomas Williams and then Gareth Davis's kicking game.
Yeah,
and I just
which is crazy because neither of them are stellar kickers of the ball, whereas Biggar is. And I expect that to change, as we were saying from a Scotland point of view. If you flip it, you have Liam Williams back available to you. You have Dan Biggar at 10. Those are two aerial aficionados. They're going to try and test Scotland in that area with kicks from various positions.
That's how they get entry. Like that has always been how these Welsh teams get entry into attack, and that's how you generate a bit of tempo. Is you put up a bomb. But Biggar's a more accurate kicker than Davis is, or whoever they go with at 9. Whether it be Hardy or anyone, they're all very much of the same mold.
They are.
Little Lloyd Williams who's come in.
It's
very similar kind of players. Zippy, tempo filled. No problem with those guys dictating the play in the offense. I like Biggar as an offensive player, but he can play second fiddle to a tempo setting 9. That's fine. But in the kicking game, Biggar needs to take over, and he needs to put big, not like the tame kicks that Farrell was putting in, where he just chipped it down for Hogg to kick back, but big contestable kicks. Like Hogg, whatever happens, Hogg's not returning with a kick because he's having to feel the ball in traffic.
Yes, that's ideal.
Ideally under pressure from either Biggar himself or Williams
or someone else,
someone along those lines, trying to make a play. And then when you do make the play on the ball, you take it to a breakdown, and then it's quick. Then Scrummy's there, then we're working the ball. All of a sudden, Tipperick and Alan Wynne-Jones are in the wide channels. Louis Sammett's in a bit of space. Those are the kind of pictures.
Roaming as well. All of these guys are dangerous.
Yeah, they've got great footballers. They're not as big as Scotland, but they can be quicker than them, and they can be more wily than them. And they have to be. They have to play much, much better in the middle of the park than what they did last week. And then I think the offense in the opposition 22 is pretty stellar.
I would agree. Like certainly their conversion rate was probably the best of the weekend just gone, in terms of they had 2 chances to shoot tries. Maybe France, but France let a couple go away towards the end of the game as well. In terms of like it's always a tougher task from when you're playing Italy as well. But very impressive in terms of their clinicality. They just need to find their entries a bit more efficiently. And they'll know that themselves. They're a pretty wise team at this point. They'll be recognising what they did a bit wrong. They'll be grateful for the win and happy with the win and take the momentum and the positives that they can. And they'll know what they need to work on as well. So the performance of the 9 is obviously very important to any Welsh side. We'll see how they go this time in terms of, are they setting the tempo? Are they getting clean ball? Because if they're losing collisions, they won't be getting clean ball, and then they won't be getting tempo. So it's a big job for them to get over the advantage line and then use their ball efficiently. And then defensively, it's a bigger task, I think, because you have to deal with obviously Finn Russell's distribution, which is a nightmare for any defensive team, especially one a bit short of confidence as this one is. It doesn't feel like they're cohesive. They're probably going to have new centres as well, so it's even less cohesion. It's very tough to be organised in a line, but they need to be. They need to be bringing line speed and ferocity and try and shut them down. But then also, like, defending the set piece is going to be pivotal for this Welsh team, because that is what they're doing. They're defending the set piece. They lost a few line outs against Ireland last week, which is unlike them.
the worst in Europe in the Autumn Nations Cup.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of things that are unlike them are just becoming like them in the last year under Pivac, and it's definitely a worrying trend.
Yeah. When you have a guy like Alan Wynne-Jones in there calling your line out, it shouldn't look as shaky as it is, and Ken Owen's back in as well. Maybe a bit of ring rust is to explain some of them, but they'll really want to set things right on their own set piece in that one. And then the scrum is one where I think they're up against it. Up in Murrayfield against a dynamic.
It's got to take some wiliness. Scrum is an 8, scrum super compact, like Ireland did against them last week, and then just force Scotland to force the issue, because that's where an area where Scotland are extremely naive is that they scrum for penalties even when they're not there, and at times you can see Rory Sutherland slip to the ground because he's too aggressive.
Yeah.
And those are the kind of pictures you want to paint, but it's a massive job.
Yeah.
In the tight head shirt. Who has that tight head shirt at the moment? Leon Brown is coming on at the moment for. Let me just remind myself, it's not Dylan Lewis. It's of course it's Exeter lad Thomas Francis.
That's right. Yes.
Yeah, proper job for him. Handling Rory Sutherland and likewise Wynne-Jones, who gets through just an enormous amount of work.
It's pretty crazy. His engine's pretty impressive.
He was top carries, top tackles. He was well, maybe not top tackles, but he had a lot of tackles and a huge amount of carries. He was pretty much hitting every hit up. It was just Wynne-Jones, and he was dominating most of them.
It's a lot to ask for back-to-back performances of that caliber from a loose head prop.
Yeah, but Scotland are going to play in the scrum.
They will a bit more so probably.
So he's probably going to have to be more of a set piece and less of a loose play influence on the game.
Indeed.
But yeah, from a defensive point of view, just locking that down will be a result. And likewise, just against the big pack that Scotland were bringing, somebody needs to step up and do the Lydiate job. I mean, for 10 minutes they did a great job of containing the Irish attack with CJ Stander and the boys trying to rumble through them with some great Lydiate chop tackling.
And then he obviously fell by the
wayside. Then he left
wayside.
the field and they just started soak tackling in large parts.
They did.
They figured it out to some extent in the second half. They maintained their discipline little better than they had done in the first half.
Yeah.
But Ireland were very rudimentary, and Scotland are more multi-dimensional than Ireland at the moment.
It's true. They have more ways of scoring. They have more
physical. Yeah, just as physical. So it's a tougher task, and it involves getting out of the line and making good
you need
tackles.
to upset their. You can't let them establish any rhythm. An arrhythmical game forcing it to be an arrhythmical game will do a lot to discourage this Scotland team.
Forcing them into kicking it, making them doubt themselves in the halfway line, and it involves contesting the pill a bit as well.
It does. Probably more like that was what was called for based on last week. There was very little jackal threat despite all the tackles made. It doesn't have to be jackling to contest the ball. You can target the ball in contact with a swinging arm towards it when you're going in for the tackle, or you can do the hold up, get kind of soak tackle and then into a choke tackle and then a turnover for a scrum. They're pretty good at that, so particularly the likes of Alan Wynne-Jones and even Tipuric have been good at that particular skill.
They worked it pretty well actually
Scotsman.
when they played Scotland last year in the Windy game. It was a couple of times in the red zone they turned them over by holding them up, because Scotland as a unit carry pretty high.
They do, and they fight for their feet. They fight for extra meters. Yeah, so you can kind of, if you can paint a false picture of this is a soft shoulder, but it's not actually, because there are two reinforcements coming in and now it's a trap.
That's what you talk about being wily. That's what Wales have been so good at historically, but new coaches in there, they haven't really shown it so far.
No, they haven't.
They're gonna have to bring some of that wiliness.
If they're to win the game, they have to be the wiser team. They have to catch a Scotland a little off the pace. Probably a little impatient. You have to force the issue. Get the ball. If you take the lead and then suddenly they're panicking, you want to force panic decisions from them and be the calm presence on the field. That's got to be Wales's winning picture.
Slow up the ball as well on halfway, and then Finn Russell's going to try something. He's always a danger. Patience is required from the 13 channel. I was talking about this little when we were talking about Scotland, but if you're Nick Tompkins defending that 13 channel, a couple of players have been able to get the better of Finn Russell's wide passing game in recent times, simply by making the read on where he's passing to, wandering into the space, not ball watching and not man watching, just sort of seeing where the space is and where he's going to pass it and getting into that channel. That's definitely a key. Likewise, just covering the space he wants to pass the ball, having a scrum half in behind covering the chip, and then having the back three sort of cover cross-field kick options, and leave him with not a lot there. And then if Bigger's up in the line, I know he spends some of his time at fullback, but if he's up in the line...
Well, even if he's defending at fullback, do you use like either Navidi or Tipperick are both pacey operators in the back row? Pressure Finn. Bring line speed in Finn's face and force him to make those decisions quickly.
He'll try a grubber that's not on or something like that, and it can be an easy turn. It can be an easy turnover.
To be honest, it even starts earlier than that. You can't allow 2-second rucks for Scotland.
The key,
That's the key. Like if they're getting 2 consecutive 2-second rucks, Finn's going to have clean ball and he's going to have the time to find the space, and his recognition of space is so good, and he has the skill set to execute and find it so often that you really have to make it not even about him by disrupting things even further early in the chain.
They didn't do a great job of that against Ireland. They soaked tackles, they didn't compete, they left a lot of easy quick.
No, they were fortuitous. They were up against a team that are not very clinical with the ball that they have.
Yeah, I mean you can always, like, it's one of Ireland have almost had a patent on making opposition defences look like world beaters for the last couple of years. It's a recurring narrative, and you can fool yourself looking at stats going, geez, only 40% of possession and we only conceded 16, one try. Geez, that's quality from our defence, but there were vulnerabilities there that Ireland just didn't exploit, and they have to be careful in that department, and they have to improve in that department if they want to win this game. Yeah,
and go forward into the tournament as well. Both teams need to improve if they're going to take this contest and then go even further. With all that said, geez, how do you see this one going?
This is good.
Corker, isn't it?
It's a fun game. It's a fun game. I'm unsure what I expect. I'm never right about these things. I missed 2 out of 3 last week, as most people did. It's hard to know which way it's going to go. I always lean on, when I don't know the answer, who I think is the better rugby team, and that's Scotland for me, hands down. I think they're I really do think that it's going to take a heroic performance from Wales or a dreadful one from Scotland where they recede into themselves to make it not go that way.
I've seen both of those before.
Of course you have. Of course you have. It's entirely possible. This is why it's a tough decision. But I think Scotland are poised to make the step up. We called them last week, we called them the nearly men. They definitely seem to be approaching just the nearly men, and maybe who knows, if they win this game they're going to set up a Triple Crown decider, and it's just a phenomenal opportunity to get some silverware. And I think this time they might not let it pass them by.
Scotland are going to do it.
I just think they're a better team, much better pack, much better set piece.
Usually, if you're going to the old adage, the forwards win games, that kind of thing, it should be Scotland judging on all things.
The only thing is they aren't clinical, and Wales are, and that could be the difference. On another day, that could be the difference. Like, Scotland could own the game as they did against England, but only have a 5-point return to show for it, and then Wales it's gone. So they have to be more clinical. But I'm going to predict they are more clinical. I'm going to predict they boss the game and win it, 20 points to 11, something like that. 9-point win.
9-point win for Scotland. Okay.
Yeah.
I'm going to say that they boss most of the game and cough it up at the last minute. I'm going to say a 2-point win for Wales.
Sneaking it and
sneaking that dagger right into the Scottish hearts.
Yeah.
No.
Oh, you can see it.
I can see this game going myriad different ways, and that's what's great about Six Nations rugby. And this clash is always a great one. They are such bitter rivals, but it's a friendly kind of bitterness, and it often produces good games. And both of them going in off wins means that whoever comes out the better side of it is going for the Triple Crown. That doesn't happen every year. It's an exciting dynamic too. So here's just hoping that it presents a great show for Saturday night in terms of the rugby that we see.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you enjoyed that video, be sure to give it a like, share with your friends, and leave a comment down below as well. We really do want to hear your thoughts.